Hi everyone, this is Becca with Faith Exposed. Today I just wanted to do a little follow-up to my previous video, which was all about viewing Christianity as an addictive substance. And I wanted to take that analogy a little further and talk about how leaving the religion can cause a lot of feelings that are similar to withdrawal. So I want to talk about ways to overcome that and how to push through those first years after deconversion and walking away from the faith. Because how difficult is it to walk away from your social group and walk away from a belief system that tells you you are nothing and that you deserve eternal torture if you don't stay and obey, if you don't believe.
You first have to accept that you're a piece of shit. And what if you don't feel like you're a piece of shit?
Right.
So now I have to stop feeling good about myself, and I have to convince myself that I am a piece of shit.
Just as much as a murderer, child molester.
Right. Just so somebody else can get me back to, or not somebody else, God can get me back to feeling good about myself. And I think that really works for people who feel like they're a piece of shit all the time.
So if you do ever find yourself drawn to an intense religion, I think we should take this as a red flag that you have some psychological work to do in order to really meet your own needs in a more beneficial way. For example, you may be suffering from a neurotransmitter imbalance that's worth addressing, or maybe you've simply attached yourself to some ideas that aren't serving you well. Because I do believe that in a healthy and balanced mental state, the message of Christianity shouldn't resonate too well. It would be off-putting. This isn't to say that we don't benefit from some humility and being able to acknowledge our own flaws and challenges in life, but to accept this Christian message of total depravity and that every inclination of our hearts is wicked should not feel right to our psyche. We should be able to sense that manipulation right away. Of course, many of us were taught this before our minds and our egos were even developed. Some of these messages straight from the Bible are Isaiah 64:6. All of us have become like one who is unclean, and all our righteous acts are like filthy rags. Psalms 51:5 says, Surely I was sinful at birth, sinful from the time my mother conceived me. Genesis 6:5, every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil all the time. Christianity requires us to accept that we're completely broken and that even babies are born guilty of original sin. And the church has become quite powerful in our society, and it does work overtime to keep people in this vulnerable and unempowered state. And so often, the way that we feel about ourselves taints the way that we look at others as well. It kind of paints our perspective of everything. So having this really broken and completely unreasonable view of yourself can also lead to harm to others. Likewise, if you are beginning to doubt the religion and you're starting to actually judge it by your own personal standards that you know are legit and at your core, then that is a sign of personal growth. Dealing with issues such as stress and anxiety properly helps to lessen the need for escape through addictive means and reduces our cravings for such. And we talked about how Christianity operates through this cycle of psychological suffering, followed by intense emotional reward and social acceptance.
So we have this process of psychological suffering followed by social reward that appears to cause experiences that might reasonably be interpreted as religious experiences. The final question then is, does Christianity make use of this process? I don't think it takes much imagination to recognize that the gospel, or good news, essentially employs this exact process.
Now, if you're someone who has deconverted from evangelical Christianity, you may still be addicted to this type of cycle. It took me so many years to realize that this was still going on in me, but it greatly helped just to be aware of it. My partner even noticed that I was drawn to psychological suffering and just the type that I was able to resolve, so that I would suffer and then resolve and feel the relief. And I just needed that cycle throughout my life. And I think it stems back to Christianity. as well as some of the trauma I experienced as a result of Christianity in my family. So once you're aware of it, then you can find healthier ways to carry it out and use it to your advantage. Find real problems that are solvable. There are so many ways to increase dopamine that are healthy and will benefit your life. Merely anticipating good things actually increases dopamine. So believing that there is a possible way out of a bad situation can be the difference between becoming sensitized to dopamine and shutting down dopamine creation, which leads to depression. Endlessly arguing or ruminating can cause anger, which depletes dopamine. So if the issue that you're dealing with is not within your control to resolve, then work to not ruminate on them, because that is depleting your neurochemicals. So what we want to do is get back to this beneficial use of dopamine, where we're truly being rewarded for something good, for accomplishing something that improves your life. But letting yourself get caught up in dopamine hits from shallow things like getting likes on social media, or through the manipulation of addictive drugs, and certainly the alternate reality escape provided by religion. These things keep our brains foggy and not thinking clearly. So to free ourselves from this addictive cycle means working against their efforts, programming, and their psychological hooks that are meant to control you. And now that we have a much better understanding of how our minds work, we're capable of coming up with much better methods of self-regulation than those that sort of worked for the people thousands of years ago when the Bible was written. AA, the Christian-based addiction recovery program, which stands for Alcoholics Anonymous, trades one drug for another socially agreed upon drug, Christianity. But I believe it's much better to empower people to be able to handle their own reality and their situations, rather than provide an alternate escape from it, or another drug which masks the real problems. Still, it might be worthwhile taking a look at AA and seeing what aspects of it are contributing to its popularity. In her book called Unbroken Brain, atheist author Maya Salovitz, who was addicted to cocaine in her late teens and early 20s, but recovered through the AA program, discusses what she thought were some of the confounding aspects of AA, as well as what really made it successful for her.
I am Maya Salovitz. I am the author of 7 books, most recently Unbroken Brain, A Revolutionary New Way of Understanding Addiction, which is about addiction as a learning disorder. I had my own addiction to cocaine and heroin in my 20s.
One of the points she makes is that she couldn't understand how they taught addiction as a medical disease, yet their proposed cure was simply meetings, confession, and prayer, everything very spiritual. But if this is truly a medical, physical disease, why is the answer religion and superstition? And what she thought was actually beneficial about AA was the community, getting to hear hundreds and thousands of stories from others who were recovering just like her.
The bottle was my solution. I went through a divorce, and that's when my drinking really picked up. Again, I didn't know how to deal with life on life's terms. My quick solution, the thing that's worked so many times before, was the bottle. I lost that medic job.
She describes the power of example as being pivotal to her recovery, which is the profound impact of witnessing others who faced similar struggles, yet they successfully found a path to recovery. So hearing other people's stories helped her immensely. Not just once, but like listening to hundreds and thousands of people share their experience and how they came out of it was inspiring and gave her ideas. And we're seeing this similar behavior in the deconstructing community. People love to listen to other people who are going through the same process of leaving religion. Thing wasn't around during my deconstruction and deconversion 13 years ago, but there's a lot of it out there today. And I credit the channel Harmonic Atheist with interviewing so many great people. And on my own channel, in my deconversion series, I really tried to share my own inner thoughts as I was going through deconstruction and then deconversion. And she also attributes the success to the little bits of CBT that she picked up from it indirectly. CBT is cognitive behavioral therapy. Though AA doesn't do CBT directly, she does say that they managed to stumble upon it incidentally. Basically, the way to heal from addiction was in learning how to properly deal with one's stress and anxiety, which of course is a different and possibly more challenging experience depending on one's innate brain structure and the neurochemicals that make it up. And Maya says she even found the idea of envisioning a higher power to be helpful for her recovery. Although she didn't use the standard Christian God, she envisioned her higher self more as being the higher power, or an idea of the collective of humanity. But I find that I can invoke the same feelings of a higher power and awe that I got from Christianity only through having this understanding that all living things emerge naturally from this universe. When she was talking about her previous addiction to cocaine and crack, Maya says this: I no longer feel a desire to ever return to cocaine. My emotional knowledge of its consequences has finally caught up with my previously ineffectual cognitive sense that it will only bring pain. But that didn't happen until I turned 23, the time at which my brain was likely completing the development of the cognitive control regions. And that development may have been what allowed me to finally recognize that the consequences of continued cocaine use would not be good, regardless of how wonderful it was that first time. And this is spot on to how I feel about leaving Christianity. It took me turning 26 before I was able to cognitively and emotionally realize that the consequence of adhering to this belief system is not what I wanted for my life. And that age of 26 is key because that's when our prefrontal cortexes are fully developed. And I think it was that development which gave me the ability to see through it. Well, that's all I have on the topic for today. I hope I've given you something helpful to think about. Until next time, bye-bye.